So what we have today is Martin and Helen reading, not just reading from their poems, but also sort of laying around the context of it. I think what we planned for this evening was that should be both poetical and personal. And into the fabric of your poems, you layer in either your thoughts about marriage in the abstract or in the particular. I leave it to you to decide how you want to do it. And, I think at every event there's a trick question. I'm going to start that off right away by asking you that because, when you ask your friends, how did you first meet when they're dating one another, it always turns out there are two versions of the same story. And I wonder which one of you wants to talk about that and whether any poems came out of that.
So we met, I was reading at a poetry festival quite near where I live on the Norfolk coast, which is very beautiful. And Helen was in the audience, but we had dinner beforehand, and she laughed at my jokes, which is most of what I look for in a potential wife, I thought. And she laughed however bad my jokes were. And she emailed me after, and for a magazine article she was doing, and we started an email correspondence. And then we went to an event together, and then I asked Helen round for lunch, and this is a quick version. And then I asked Helen if she'd go out with me. This was quite soon. I'd just finished one relationship, but Helen scandalously was still in a relationship, which she should tell you something about.
I was basically living with a bit of a psychopath. I had a relationship with him and he turned weirder and weirder over the 11 years. And every day he would say, he'd realised he was being a psychopath, so every day he would say to me, "You're going to leave me soon, aren't you?" And I was, no. And one day I just turned around after I'd met Martin and I said yes, and I didn't realise I was going to say yes. It might have been somebody else for all I knew. It's just the words yes came out of my mouth.
Well, did any of you write any poems about that or about...
Helen's got a boyfriend poem, haven't you?
Well, the thing is, okay, I've got a poem from my first book before I even met Martin. Okay. And then he's written a response because he assumed it was about him. It's a very short poem and it's called Fairy Tale. If I was my boyfriend, I would not forget my birthday or how to use a knife and fork. If I was my boyfriend, I would not get drunk and eat all of the cheese or pretend to be asleep while mice marched through the kitchen looking for bits of cheese that just happened to be lying around. If I was my boyfriend, I would definitely treat me like a princess, unless of course I needed to feel independent like a modern girl should. If I was my boyfriend, I would eat fire, move mountains, write opera, swim the channel, change the world and serenade me from under my window while I plaited my hair in a strong, thick rope for me to climb.
I am Helen Ivory's boyfriend. Forget her birthday, chance would be a fine thing. I am Helen Ivory's boyfriend. Yes, I eat all the cheese, but she is going through a non-dairy fad, so who else is going to eat it? I pointed this out, and apparently it's a metaphor, and if I need to ask what for, then there is no point in telling me. I am Helen Ivory's boyfriend. I would eat fire, but I'm busy with the cheese. I could swim the channel, but the weight of expectation might well drown me. I am Helen Ivory's boyfriend, and I'll serenade her from under her window just as soon as I've finished all the other jobs. I am Helen Ivory's boyfriend. I would rescue her if she plaited her hair in a strong, thick rope, but she's had it cut off. This is both true and a bloody metaphor.
Helen, you come to poetry from a much more of a writing background. Well, Martin, you were a major in the army for a long time, isn't it?
I was in the army for 25 years.
What?
Yeah.
25 years? What time did you start?
When I was 15.
Can you start so early?
Yeah. But it's a junior army, and then you grow into the big army. And I came from a care background, so I wasn't in a sort of stable family position. So joining the army is one way of kind of becoming independent, I suppose. And so, because you have accommodation and food and stuff, and can be responsible for yourself, to some extent.
And how did you begin to love poetry? Was it from reading when you were a teenager, or did you come to it much later?
I started reading when I was a teenager, and I read a lot. I was a bit of a bookworm, and I like poetry, and I like showing off and talking. So I used to write funny things, and I had a very difficult childhood, which is sort of part of something else. But and I like to think that was what gave me this need to show up. But I remember when I was 4 years old in my first school, and there was a class, and everyone was quiet and shy. One of the first things I did was go and tell the teacher that I had a joke to tell everybody, and so it's got nothing to do with that. But as I grew to sort of did performance, I got to know poets more and more. So the writing became, I suppose, maybe not more important, but equally important to performing. And I read the Liverpool poets, Roger McGough, Brian Patton, quite popular stuff, and then kind of graduated my way through into more serious work, I suppose. Yeah.
Well, I was thinking about what modern love poetry is like, and it seems to me that in older traditions of writing stories about love, it's the problem in the story, or the thing that holds love up, is usually something outside of the lovers. It's like in Romeo and Juliet, it's the family, it's distance, it's tradition, something like that. Whereas I think love poetry in a time tends to emphasize that the difficulties are kind of intrapersonal, it's between two people who actually have nothing in the way of their being together, but that's when they begin to find out that there's another layer of difficulty. And I remember reading one of your poems, and there you speak about being together with somebody like being like a clever game of catch, which I thought was a very nice image, in which you throw things out to one another, and the other person is supposed to catch them and also maybe throw something back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I wondered if you want to read that poem and maybe even talk about this too.
Sure. Well, when you start writing a love poem, because basically people have been writing love poems for as long as they've been writing and as long as they've been love and all of that kind of thing. So the notion of kind of finding new metaphors for writing about love. So in my second book, The Dog in the Sky, there's lots of love poems for Martin in there. And so I concentrated a lot on science and alchemy as metaphors. And this poem's called Element, and it's on the first sheet of my poems. I think I have discovered the 117th element. I've been saving a space especially on this sketched out edge of things. I know its weight, feel its gravity, its restlessness, its itching to be something else. It's in the air we breathe in and out to each other in love, passing particles of low heaven like a clever game of catch.
Failure. He loves me, I suppose. I am a failure. There's a better way of doing things. I am a dramatic woman. I know I think too much of myself, and I should be submissive, a proper wife. He's very caring, really. He says I like to be dominated. When he's jealous, he's abusive towards me. I'm afraid I won't grow old. I sometimes tell him that he's beautiful looking. He will try and tell me about love, but hate is something he needs and I don't. He says I am a failure and I don't. He says I am a failure, but hate is something he needs. Try and tell me about love. He's beautiful looking. He will grow old. I sometimes tell him that he's abusive towards me. I'm afraid I won't be dominated when he's jealous. He's very caring, really. He says I like to be submissive, a proper wife. I think too much of myself and I should. I am a dramatic woman. I know there's a better way of doing things. I suppose I am a failure. He loves me.
Slowly he watched her disappear. The empty pile where there used to be ironing, the absence of lipstick from her coffee cup, the plants dry from wanting. Her conversation became vague. She would sit motionless in front of unlit fires, talking in circles about boats she once owned and lions that ate from the palm of her hand. At the start of her disappearing, she would spend all day in the kitchen, whisking up exotic meals from recipes she said she had learned from foreign shores. But as her disappearing became more pronounced, she avoided the kitchen entirely, so he made sturdy broths to feed her up when her bones began to show. Although by now she had stopped talking, she would stand at the tall window dreamily singing songs he'd never heard, songs that sounded less and less like earthly music. One morning, when he was on the edge of sleep, a soft fluttering persuaded him awake, and there she was, a translucent shape hovering at the open window. He tried hopelessly to catch her ankle as she drifted outside into the dawn light, where already birds in their thousands were gathering in the sky.
That's really beautiful.
Thank you.
Well, here's a question I want to ask you. Here, your poem's disappearing, and when we see right at the end that she, the she of the poem, is a translucent shape hovering at the open window, it's as if somebody's receding. But I wanted to ask if this process can't be reversed and somebody appears in the same way, and that if being in a relationship, maybe it means that people have to disappear in order to appear again.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, I mean, people disappear and reappear all the time, don't they? They kind of fade out of being one person and then reappear like an old photographic process where you just see the image kind of reappear out of the tray of liquid or whatever alchemy is used to make somebody reappear. So yeah, it's about, I guess, reinvention.
If I had the money, I would catch a train to Shrewsbury tonight. Frank, darling, I love you so much. It is impossible to wait for 12 months. I just can't do it, darling. I want you to ask Mum again, and if she says no, break it to her gently. We're going to apply to the magistrates.
She reaches her white-gloved hand across the refreshment room table. They don't notice the rain outside, nor the other couples parting and meeting. He tells her again, with that dark accent, that he loves her, and it is like her heart has stopped, like nothing could be forbidden.
I want it to be nice, to go to bed without curlers. We can pretend we are married.
There is only enough moonlight for the shape of him. She learns by touch. Afterwards her head spills black curls onto his chest. The sound of their breathing fills the room.
I still want a peach, but I have no hope of getting one.
There in the middle of a white plate, in the middle of the table, a peach in the glow of its own light. It's for her, and how he got it, he will never tell, only say that in China it's a name given to a young bride and a symbol for everlasting life.
I should keep the house nice and have the water ready for your wash and have your clothes ready to change and your slippers by the fire. While you're getting washed and changed, I can have your tea on the table.
A whole day slips through the pale purple of mansion polish. A carpet sweeper chases specks of dust through lavender fields. Her own face appears in the furniture. She shines small brass animals back to life. A tiny kitchen disappears into the mist of an afternoon, and a sponge cake rises behind the oven door. He watches the last slow hour on the factory clock.